Hi, I'm Stuart. Welcome to my channel. Thanks for viewing my video. In this video I'm going to list the 10 books that made me. This isn't a tag. I saw Pat at Book Chat with Pat 8668 do a video of the 10 books that made her. So I got an idea for doing this video. I'm just going to repeat what Pat said to credit those whose videos led her to do her video. Recently, Pat saw a video by Olly at Criminale blog and 10 books that have helped to shape him as a reader. Then she saw a video by Brian at Bookish Texan of 10 books that shaped his reading. She decided that she wanted to do a video on the same topic. She encourages others who are interested to participate too. She included Olly's and Brian's videos. I'm going to include them in the description of this video also if you'd like to take a look at them. So here's the 10 books that made me. The first books I remember reading are Hardy Boys series by Franklin Dixon. I'm sure my mother read books to me before then. I'm sure I read picture books, but I don't remember those. The Hardy Boys series is the first I remember. I don't remotely remember which one I read first, whether I read them in order or whatever. It's just that they were the first that I read. I remember them. They were hardbacks. They were blue covers. Those are the first books I remember. The second book, actually more than one book, but number 2 is, after the Hardy Boys I read some science fiction. It's the first genre I love, and the favorite author of mine in science fiction was Isaac Asimov. I don't remember which of his books I read first. I do remember reading the Foundation series. I do remember there was a law called the First Law of Robotics, which was threaded through some of his books. Like many of those laws, I think the law was broken a lot, but I do remember that. I don't remember the first book I read of his. Number 3 is Salem's Lot by Stephen King. In this case, I do remember the first book. I'm pretty sure it's the first Stephen King book I read. Why this was important is that this led me into horror. Sci-fi was great as a kid. The speculative science in it was great for a kid, but as I got older, I wanted more character, and horror gave it to me. Stephen King and other authors that I later read. Not to say that some sci-fi books don't have good character, but good character development, but the books that I was reading didn't. Number 4 is The Vampire Lestat by Anne Rice. I read this book before I read her Interview with the Vampire, and even after reading Interview with the Vampire, I liked The Vampire Lestat better. This book introduced me to the romantic vampire, the vampire that wasn't purely evil. A lot of people at that time decried the romantic vampire, probably still do, but I think that the romantic vampire gives a lot more range and a lot more things to write about than just sticking to the purely evil vampire. I ended up reading a lot more Anne Rice books. Number 5 is Changeling by Yasmine Galenorn. I remember when I got this book, it was in a Borders at a mall I frequent. Borders, of course, sadly, long since gone. I read a little in the book, and then I realized that it was a book 2 in a series, so I got Witchling, which was the first book in the series. I believe these ended up reading the remainder of the series, which was 21 books total, and there were some short stories also. I believe these books were the books that introduced me to fantasy, which is now actually, based upon Storygraph, my top genre. Number 6 is Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. I think this is really the book that really got me reading YA books. I doubt it was the first YA book that I read. There were probably others. But I think this was a book that really led me to reading a lot more YA books. It could also be considered a dark romance too, but I don't recall that term being used then. The 7th book is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. This is a book that made me realize that I like dystopian books. Not the first dystopian book I read. In my youth I read The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. And in school we read books like Fahrenheit 451 and 1984. But I believe The Hunger Games is really the book that made me realize that I like reading dystopian fantasy. Really think about it, it's kind of a strange genre to like. And there are those who would argue that we are actually living in a dystopian novel right now. Kind of beyond the scope of my discussion in this book, but is a little food for thought. The 8th book is I Kiss Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston. This is the book that really introduced me to LGBTQIA+ books. It's not the first book I read with queer characters. Yasmine Galenorn's books have a lot of them, but they're based in a fantasy world. I believe I Kiss Shara Wheeler is the first book I read based in the real world. Might have been others before, but I don't recall them. It also made me aware of YA books with queer characters because it's a YA book. The 9th book is Of Cockroaches and Crickets by Frank Nish. This book made me aware that there's interesting books written about characters that most of us, including me before reading books like this, would consider insignificant. This book made clear the importance they play in the world. The 10th book is Becoming Nicole, The Transformation of an American Family by Amy Ellis Nutt. This book made me aware that I could read books that are on difficult topics because I tend to shy away from those books, both in fiction and nonfiction, and this is a book that made me aware that I can read a book on difficult subjects and it can provide valuable information to me too. I kind of want to do a number 11, determining a book that led to me reading romance books, but I really can't think of one. Certainly Yasmine Galenorn's books have romance in them, even if they're primarily fantasy. Twilight has romance in it, but I can't really think of any book that was really specifically an entry level to reading romance books. I almost think more than anything it's watching booktuber videos that caused me to read romance books set in the real world. This isn't a tag video, so I'm not going to tag anybody. I'm just going to say if this is a topic that you think you have something to say and you would like to share, please do so. Certainly doesn't have to be 10 books. It could be 1 book, 5 books, 20 books, whatever. But if you're interested in sharing, please do so. And if you like to share my comments too, if you don't do videos or you prefer not to make a video about this, please do so too. I just found it an interesting thing to think about. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, please subscribe, please hit the bell to get notified when I upload future videos. I hope you're having a wonderful reading week, and I hope you're having a wonderful day.